The thing is, I did not think walking away was the betrayal. I thought the betrayal had already happened quietly, in all the years my husband made love feel scheduled. 2 drinks. 1 wristband. No crime. Or that was what I told myself while Nico held the club door open. By morning, my husband had stopped asking where I had been. My name is Elena Voss. I was 33, and I worked as creative director for a boutique fitness and nightlife brand where women paid us to make being watched feel like power. The thing is, I knew how to build a room around desire before I knew how to live inside one without needing applause. 2 mirrors. 1 late shoot. Of course, I told myself wanting to be seen was not a crime. The studio smelled of rubber mats, citrus cleaner, and the hot metal from the lights we had left on too long. Our model had just finished the last shot for a campaign called Be Seen Loudly, and I was standing near the mirror hallway, checking whether the silver lettering on the wall caught enough light. That was my job. I made bodies look brave and rooms look like they had chosen you personally. Raphael came in through the side door with my flat shoes under one arm and a paper bag in the other. My husband had remembered the soup from the place near the tram stop because I forgot dinner when shoots ran late. He also brought my charger, the grey one with tape around the cord, because he said mine would die before the files finished uploading. A few years before, that would have made me smile. On our early dates, he used to wait outside warehouse shoots with fries wrapped in paper and old concert wristbands still on his arm, because I said taking them off killed the night too early. He kept those wristbands in a small box under his side of the closet. Back then, his memory felt like proof. Now he placed the bag on my desk and asked softly what had changed between us. He meant he missed me. I know that now. What I heard was that he wanted me to explain my face like a late invoice. I told him work had been heavy. I said the campaign was eating my brain. I said nothing had changed because that was easier than saying his quiet care had started making me feel older than I was. My phone lit up beside the light meter. Marcy had texted that stable husbands made women age faster than bad lighting. I smiled before I could stop myself. Raphael saw it. Of course he did. He did not ask who had written to me. He only looked at the soup bag, then at my face, then back at the mirror wall. After a second, he stopped taking things out of the bag and left my flat shoes on the floor beside my chair. The wine bar Marcy liked sat under a narrow hotel with black awnings and a doorman who never looked surprised by anything. It smelled of lemon peel, wet coats, and the kind of expensive candle people buy when they want a room to seem clean instead of lonely. The thing is, I went there to breathe. 2 glasses. 1 friend. No plan. Or at least no plan I would have admitted to then. Marcy was already at the corner table wearing red lipstick and the divorce smile she used when she wanted sadness to look like freedom. She had been my friend since my first brand job, back when we both thought cheap Prosecco and late nights proved we were building lives. Her marriage had ended 18 months earlier, and she talked about it like she had escaped a soft room with no windows. She asked if Raphael had brought soup again. I told her he had. She said that was sweet in the way hotel slippers were sweet, useful until you wanted to leave the building. I told her not to be cruel, but my mouth moved into a smile before the warning reached it. Marcy said Raphael loved like a man checking smoke detectors. She said he probably thought passion was something you scheduled after the gas bill. I laughed too hard. Of course, the joke felt harmless because Raphael was not there to hear it. That was how Marcy worked. She never pushed first. She placed a sentence on the table, polished and sharp, and waited to see if I picked it up. She enabled me because my chaos made her feel less alone. If my marriage could look like a cage, then hers had not failed because of her. It had failed because cages existed. Nico appeared in my life the next afternoon through a campaign meeting at a club called Vanta. We were building a co-branded fitness event for their Sunday recovery parties. All black towels, cold juice, and women pretending a hangover was lifestyle content. Nico Darden handled promotions there. He was 29, lean, smiling, and always half-turned toward the next better thing. He had the easy posture of a man who had never carried anyone's tiredness home. He came late to the meeting, took one look at the mood board, and said the brand felt like a woman walking into a room before anyone had permission to look away. Everyone heard it. B heard it. The assistant with the laptop heard it. Even the bartender polishing glasses near the empty dance floor looked over. That mattered. Of course it mattered. Raphael complimented me in useful places. In the car, in the kitchen, near the washing machine, while checking whether I had eaten. Nico said things where other people could hear them. After the meeting, he asked where to send a few club references. The studio email was printed on the proposal in his hand. I still gave him my personal number. My thumb moved over the screen like it had already chosen before I could make it sound reasonable. That was the first active lie. Not the club. Not the dancing later. That number, given under blue lights while B packed her laptop beside me. Nico messaged that night at 12:17. He sent a photo of the empty VIP area and said it needed me in it to make sense. I was in bed when the screen lit up. Raphael was brushing his teeth, and I held the phone lower against the blanket. I answered with a laugh reaction. Then I turned the phone face down. Raphael came back and asked why Nico was texting after midnight about a campaign Bay had already sent through the studio email. Specific. Calm. One named thing. That was Raphael's way. He did not begin with hurt. He brought one object to the table and waited for me to name it correctly. I told him Nico worked nightlife hours and that not everyone lived inside spreadsheets. Raphael said he knew what nightlife hours were. He said he was asking why I had given a club promoter my personal number and then hidden the screen when he came in. What he meant was that the shape of something had changed. What I heard was that he wanted to inspect me. The thing is, my mother spent 22 years married to a man everyone called respectable. My father never yelled. He never drank too much. He never came home with lipstick on his collar. He only let other people talk over her at dinners. He let uncles joke about her spending. He let neighbours ask why she worked part-time as if it were a hobby. Then, when she cried later, he told her not to make a scene. She used to say quiet men make women disappear slowly. So when Raphael asked one careful question, I heard my mother's whole kitchen behind him. I told him he only cared because another man had made me visible. I said he had no problem with me being tired, overworked, and quiet, as long as nobody else noticed the parts of me he had stopped seeing. He sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the carpet. His hands were open between his knees. For 1 second he looked simply sad, not strategic, not controlling, not cold. He said he did not know how to make me feel seen when every practical thing he did started offending me. I could have answered that. I could have told him the campaign launch 6 months earlier had stayed under my skin, that his father's medical emergency had been real, but the applause without him beside me had made something sour in me. I could have said I needed him louder because I was tired of translating care into romance alone. Instead, I said that if he needed instructions, he had already missed the point. He nodded once. Not agreement. Storage. The next morning, B saw me delete a notification from Nico while we waited for coffee outside the studio. She asked if everything was okay with Raphael. Her voice was soft, but her eyes had already moved to my phone. I told her everyone was becoming dramatic about a vendor. I said Raphael was turning one message into a marriage audit. Bea said Nico liked attention more than work. She said it as if she were warning me, but gently enough to deny it later. I told her I handled men like Nico for a living. After that, she stopped teasing me about the campaign. She still sent documents. She still answered work questions. But in the studio kitchen, she stood at the other end of the counter. By Friday, Raphael no longer asked what time I would be home. He only put my dinner in a glass container and wrote the date on tape across the lid. I called it sulking when I told Marcy. She called it evidence that stable men punished women through silence. I like that version because it made my own silence sound like self-defense. Nico sent one more message before Saturday. He said Vanta had reserved a VIP booth for the campaign team and that I should wear something that made the room behave. I read it twice in the studio restroom, under white light that made my face look sharper than it was. Raphael texted that he could come if I wanted support. I answered that he could come if he wanted to see what my work actually looked like. That was not an invitation. It was a challenge with clean shoes. Vanta smelled of spilled lime, smoke machine fog, and perfume sweating under blue lights. The entrance girl clipped a silver wristband around my arm, and Nico leaned over the counter to tell her I was with him. The thing is, I heard that little phrase more clearly than I should have. 2 words. 1 wristband. Of course, I told myself access was not the same as desire. Raphael arrived 10 minutes after us in a dark shirt I had once said made him look serious. He looked good. That annoyed me first because it took away one easy excuse. He kissed my cheek and asked if I needed anything. Water, food, a quieter corner before the campaign guests arrived. Practical things. Care with no heat around it. Marcy came in behind him with B, already laughing at something the doorman had said. She hugged me and touched the wristband. She said Nico knew how to make a woman feel upgraded. Bear did not laugh. She looked at Raphael, then at me, and asked if the whole team was coming. Nico appeared before I could answer. He handed me a drink I had not ordered and said the room looked better with my name on the list. Raphael was close enough to hear. His eyes moved to the glass, then to Nico's hand, then to my face. I could have handed the drink to Raphael and made the whole thing ordinary. Instead, I took it. The VIP booth had black leather seats and a low table crowded with bottles we had not paid for. Club photographers moved through the room like birds, quick and bright. Nico sat close enough that his knee brushed mine under the table, then moved away before it could become a thing anyone could name. That was his gift. He knew how to be almost guilty. Raphael stood near the edge of the booth, speaking to B about the campaign schedule. He tried. I saw it. He asked about the recovery event. He asked where the logo would go. He asked what time the photographer needed the product shots. Every question was polite. Every question made him look like a visitor in a room Nico owned. Marcy leaned close and said Raphael looked like he wanted a safety briefing for the DJ booth. I told her to stop. Then I smiled again. Nico asked me to dance when the first campaign guests came through. He said the photographer needed movement. Of course, that was the professional version. I stood up before B could suggest a planned shot list. On the dance floor, Nico stayed close but not explicit. He guided me with one hand near my wrist, the one with the silver band. The camera flashed twice. I knew Raphael could see us from the booth. I knew because the back of my neck felt warmer whenever I turned. That should have made me step away. Instead, I smiled wider. Raphael came over after the second song. He did not touch me. He did not raise his voice. He asked if we could talk outside for 1 minute. Just one. He said the quiet was the point, though he did not use those words. His face looked steady, but his jaw had gone tight. I heard control. I heard him pulling me from the center of the room because he did not know how to stand there with me. I told him not to turn my work night into a marriage meeting. Marcy laughed once from behind him, bright and quick. B looked down at the table. Nico lifted both hands as if he was innocent of gravity. Raphael said he was not trying to embarrass me. He said he was asking because I had been ignoring him all night while letting another man perform closeness in front of him. That sentence should have slowed me down. It was too accurate to dismiss easily. So I made it public. I told the booth Raphael always confused marriage with supervision. I said he could not let me have one fun night without turning into a quiet security guard. My voice carried farther than I planned. A woman from the campaign team looked over from the next table. One of Nico's bartenders stopped pouring for half a second. People laughed unevenly. Not because it was funny, because laughter gives a room somewhere to stand. Raphael looked at me, not at them. That made it worse. If he had looked ashamed, I could have told myself he had deserved the moment. If he had looked angry, I could have made him the villain. But he looked tired in a way that made my own mouth feel too loud. Nico leaned closer and said his apartment had better music and fewer rules. He said it softly for me, but Raphael heard enough. Marcy heard it too. Her smile changed. Not gone, just less sure. The thing is, I did not plan to leave with Nico when the night started. I planned to be wanted. There is a difference until the door opens and everyone sees which direction your feet are moving. Raphael asked again if we could step outside. A quiet debrief. No scene. No demand. One private door offered in the middle of all that blue light. I looked at him and thought of my mother at dinner tables, waiting for a man to defend her with more than silence. I thought of campaign applause with Raphael absent. I thought of all the soup, all the chargers, all the neat containers in the fridge. Care that arrived like maintenance, love that never made the room turn. So I said he was ruining the first fun night I had had in months. No one laughed that time. Nico picked up his jacket. He told me the car was already outside because he knew the club driver. Agenda, I would call it now. Even then, he was protecting himself. No waiting on the street. No public argument. No messy pause where someone could ask what he thought he was doing with a married woman. I walked toward the exit with him. The crowd near the door had thinned, but enough people were still there. Bea stood by the coat check with her phone in her hand. Marcy stood behind Raphael, no longer touching her drink. A club photographer lowered his camera as if even he knew this was not the right kind of picture. Raphael stayed near the entrance. He did not block me. He did not follow. He only looked at my raised hand when Nico held the door open. The silver wristband caught the light. For 1 second, in the glass beside the door, I saw myself from the outside. Black dress, bright mouth. Another man waiting. My husband behind me, still enough to look like a figure someone had forgotten to move. The image had no romance in it. It looked cheap in a way no lighting could fix. The door opened onto cold air, and that small, clear thought stepped close enough to touch me. Then I closed it. I told myself Raphael had finally seen what neglect created. I told myself walking away was not betrayal if I had already been left emotionally first. I told myself this was what a woman did when she was tired of being invisible. Behind me, Raphael lifted his phone once, not toward my face, toward the wristband on my raised hand as Nico guided me outside. One photo, one quiet husband, no clean way back into the room. Morning came through our bedroom blinds in thin grey lines, and the apartment smelled like cold coffee from the pot Raphael had made hours earlier. The silver wristband was still on my arm. The thing is, I had meant to cut it off before coming home. 2 shoes in my hand. 1 dress from last night. Of course, I told myself, forgetting was not the same as wanting him to see it. Raphael was at the kitchen table when I walked in. He had not changed from the night before. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and a glass of water sat near his hand, untouched. My wedding ring was on the counter. I had left it in the bathroom before the club because it snagged on the dress. I remembered that only when I saw it there. He looked at the wristband first. Not my face. Not my hair. The wristband. He asked where I had been after I left Vanta. His voice was even, but it had lost the softness from before. This was not the same man asking what changed between us. This was a man naming the pattern because the individual pieces had finally started fitting together. I said I went to Nico's place with a few people after the club. That was the shape of the lie. A few people. Soft edges. No names. Raphael said Lena had seen a location story before it was deleted. He said Bea had messaged him at 2:11 because she was worried. He said our shared family app showed the rideshare route ending at Nico's building, not at Vanta, not at Bea's, not at any after-party. Specific. Factual. A map instead of a shout. I told him Lena had always wanted him to see me as dangerous. I said his sister loved being the calm woman near any fire. It was a stupid sentence, but I needed someone else to hold the weight. Raphael said this was not about Lena. He said it was not even about Nico first. He said it was about me making him stand in a room and watch me choose another man, then coming home with the proof still on my wrist. I wanted him to yell then. I wanted heat. Heat would have made us equal. He reached across the counter and touched the paper edge of the wristband with 2 fingers. Not my skin. The band. He asked if he could cut it off because the clasp would tear if I pulled. I let him because refusing would have made the moment too honest. He took scissors from the drawer. The small metal sound against the band was louder than it should have been. He cut once. The wristband opened and fell into his palm. Then he folded it. That was the trigger. Not the rideshare route. Not Lena. Not the video. Raphael folded the silver band into a small square with the same care he used when saving receipts, concert tickets, and old notes from places we had been happy. He placed it beside my wedding ring on the counter. The ring looked ordinary there, small, waiting. For a minute I almost saw it. Not guilt. Something colder. Raphael was not trying to control me. He was removing himself from a room where I kept making him watch the exit. Every practical thing he had done, every container in the fridge, every charger, every pair of flat shoes, had been his language. I had hated him for speaking it badly, then punished him in a language he never deserved. The thought opened like a door with no sound. I shut it myself. I picked up the ring and put it back on. Not tenderly. Not because I wanted to repair anything. I put it on because I wanted to prove he did not get to act finished while I was still standing there. Raphael watched the ring slide over my finger. His face changed by almost nothing. That almost nothing told me too much. He said he was going to stay with Lena for the day. I said that was dramatic. I said if he wanted space, he should admit he was punishing me. He stood, took the folded wristband, and put it in the pocket of his shirt. He did not answer. After he left, I called Marcy. She answered on the 5th ring, her voice rough with sleep. I told her Raphael was acting like I had committed a crime because I went to an after-party. Marcy said it sounded messy. Just that. Messy. The word landed badly. Marcy usually made my choices sound clean, brave, necessary, fun. Messy was what people said when they wanted distance without declaring it. I asked if she thought I had done something wrong. She said Raphael should not have followed my location if we had trust. That helped for 2 seconds. Then she said she had to go because her mother was calling. Her mother had been dead for 3 years. I remembered that after she hung up. At noon, Lena called. I let it ring out, then texted that I was not interested in being judged by Raphael's family. Lena replied once. She said she was not judging me for leaving the club. She was done pretending Raphael had imagined the way I made him small. There was no emoji. Lena always used emojis even in serious messages. That absence had shape. That evening, Raphael came back for clothes. He moved through the bedroom quietly, taking shirts, socks, his shaving kit, and the small box under his side of the closet. The concert wristbands. Our old ones. I asked if he was really taking souvenirs like a teenager. He said they were not souvenirs. He said they were records of nights when I used to want him beside me. That should have hurt me cleanly. Instead, I made it ugly. I told him he loved records more than people. I said he had always been better at saving proof than creating passion. He stopped with his hand on the closet shelf. For the first time that day, he looked at me fully. He said I was right that he had loved me too quietly. He said he had hidden behind useful things when he should have risked looking foolish for me. He said that was his failure. Then he added that his failure had not walked out of a club holding Nico's hand. The name sat between us. I said he was twisting one night into a story about our whole marriage. He said he was naming the whole marriage because I had spent months turning him into the boring man in every room before I finally gave the room a picture. He closed the box and carried it out. That was the silent decision marker, though I called it sulking then. Raphael taking that box meant he had stopped negotiating through memory. He was taking the past with him because he no longer trusted me to keep it whole. The apartment walls seemed too flat after he left. I poured wine and did not drink it. I opened the group chat with Marcy, B, and 2 studio friends. B had left the chat. No message. No announcement. Just her name gone from the top line. 2 days later, the studio smelled of cold espresso and damp towels from the morning class. I stood in my office with the door half closed, staring at a cropped photo from Vanta. The thing is, I knew exactly what was in the frame and what I had cut out. Nico's hand near my waist, my silver wristband catching the light. No Raphael. Of course, that made it easier to call the picture mine. I posted it during lunch. The caption said that some nights reminded you that you were still alive. Voluntary line crossed. Not impulse. Not wine. Not Nico. My thumb hit share while B's empty desk sat outside my office, and Raphael's last message stayed unanswered on my phone. Nico reacted first with a black heart. Marcy did not react for 20 minutes. That felt longer than it should have. Raphael called at 1:08. I let it ring once, then answered because not answering would make me look afraid, even alone. He asked me to take the post down. His voice was quiet, but not soft. He said he was not asking because of pride. He said I was turning our marriage into content, and people who did not know us were being invited to laugh at the part where he had stood there. I told him he should have thought about public feeling before making me live on private care for years. He said he was not calling himself blameless. Then he waited. The space he left was dangerous because I had the true sentence ready. I told him he had loved me so quietly that I often had to translate his care into romance by myself. I said I was tired of being handed soup and charges and expected to feel desired. I said he remembered my tiredness better than he remembered my hunger. He did not refute it. That was the worst part. He did not tell me I was lying. He did not list all the times he had tried. He only said he should have loved me louder. For a second, the room had no air moving through it. Then he said that still did not explain why I made him watch me leave with another man, or why I posted the proof after he asked for dignity. I could have stopped at the true part. I could have let the true part stand without using it as a weapon. Instead, I said maybe watching was the only way he ever learned anything. The line landed. I could hear it in the silence after. Not because he gasped or cursed or even breathed differently, because he stopped trying to place himself inside the conversation. He said he would handle things properly now. No legal words, no threats, no names. The tone was the threat because it was empty of wanting. Raphael had always sounded like he was reaching for me, even when he failed. This time he sounded like a man reading a door number. I asked if he was threatening me. He said no. He said he was done explaining himself badly. Then he hung up. The rest of the afternoon became logistical around him and loud around me. He sent one message asking what time I would not be home so he could collect the remaining work papers from the apartment. He asked if I preferred he left my studio tax files on the desk or with the doorman. He asked for no conversation around it. I hated the neatness. It made me feel like the emotional one, which I was, and also like the guilty one, which I did not want. I messaged Marcy 3 times. First, I sent the post and asked if it looked too much. Then, I told her Raphael was acting cold in a new way. Then, I asked if she could come over after work. She reacted with a heart and stopped answering. That was all. One heart where a voice used to be. Nico called at 6, which I first took as rescue. He said the photo was hot, but maybe not ideal for the campaign page if Raphael was making noise. He asked if my husband was the kind of guy who would email brands. He laughed after he asked, but the laugh had a locked door inside it. Agenda B. I did not have that language then. Nico was managing exposure. He liked being wanted, but not enough to stand under consequence. I told him Raphael was not dangerous. I said he was quiet. Nico said quiet guys sometimes went weird when embarrassed. He suggested I archive the post until things cooled down. I asked if he was embarrassed by me. He said no, of course not. He just did not want drama with married people. Married people. Not me. Not us. A category he could step away from. I hung up and left the post where it was. That evening, I went back to the apartment because Raphael had said he would come at 8. I wanted to be there, though I told myself it was because I did not trust him with my files. The balcony door was open. and the air smelled like rain on concrete. Our old balcony chairs faced the city where we used to name 3 good things from the day. Raphael's were always practical. Clear traffic, good bread, your shoot wrapped early. Mine used to be more dramatic. A client cried from happiness. A room turned when I walked in. You looked at me like I mattered. He arrived at 8:04 with a canvas folder and no overnight bag. I said he was 4 minutes late. It was a weak opening, and we both knew it. He said traffic on Alcott was blocked. Then he went to the desk and gathered papers with calm hands. Receipts, insurance folders, bank statements, the copy of our lease. A printed list I had not seen before with dates and neutral notes. Vanta, Nico message, location app, public post. I asked why he was making a case file if he had nothing to hide behind. He said records kept him from arguing in circles. He said circles were how we kept hurting each other and calling it discussion. I told him he sounded like a committee. He said maybe committees at least wrote down what happened. That was the pattern now. He became smaller in language and larger in consequence. He did not need to win a sentence because he had stopped building a life out of them. I tried a microshift then. Not apology. Not really. Controlled partial truth. I told him I had felt alone at the campaign launch 6 months earlier when his father's emergency kept him away. I said I knew that sounded unfair. I said I had stood under applause and wanted my husband there, and after that, every quiet thing he did had started arriving late. He stopped sorting papers. For 1 second he looked wounded in a way that had nothing strategic in it. He said his father could not stand up without help that night. He said he had watched my speech on Marcy's phone from a hospital hallway. He said he thought calling me afterward would make me feel supported, but I had told him I was busy with guests. I remembered that call. I remembered declining it and telling myself he had chosen a hallway over me. The thought came close again, not as clear as the wristband, but close enough. Then I closed it. I said maybe he should have come before the speech and gone back after. I heard how ugly it sounded only after it left me. Raphael put the papers into the folder. He said that was the final offer he had left in him. Not to fix us. To be honest about the one night I kept using as permission. I said he always wanted honesty when it made me smaller. He looked toward the balcony chairs. He said nothing for long enough that my own words had to sit without help. When he left, he took the canvas folder and the small box of wristbands from his car, then carried both with the same hand. No speech, no slam, no performance. The silence after the door closed was more frightening than any argument he had ever refused to give me. The mediation office had beige walls, a glass water pitcher, and a clock that clicked too loudly between sentences. The thing is, I arrived expecting boundaries. 2 chairs, 1 folder. Of course, I thought Raphael had asked for the meeting because he needed a controlled room to say he was hurt. Raphael was already there with Lena beside him. Clara Wynne, the mediator, sat at the end of the table with a yellow pad. A man named Damon Price had a thin folder in front of him and did not introduce himself like a friend. The document was titled Petition for Dissolution of Marriage with Temporary Financial Orders. Damon said the temporary orders hearing was scheduled for the following month. He said major joint withdrawals were frozen until then, and both of us would provide records of shared spending. I signed for the envelope because the receptionist had followed me in with it. Then I stood holding the pen too long before putting it down beside the water pitcher. My hand went to my ring, but the ring was not there. I had taken it off that morning because my finger was swollen, or because I wanted Raphael to see I could remove things too. The evidence was not new. That made it worse. The rideshare route to Nico's building, Lena's saved club story, the photo of my wristband from Raphael's phone, my public post after he had asked me to take it down, Nico's messages about avoiding drama with married people, the location history from the family app I forgot we still shared. I said Raphael was using paperwork because he had never known how to fight for me emotionally. Clara looked at the post printed on the second page and asked why I had kept it online after he asked for privacy. Neutral. Not cruel. just true. My version did not land in that room. Nico texted before the meeting ended. He wrote that he did not want drama with married people and that I should not mention his name again. When I tried to answer, the message failed. He had blocked me. The short-term studio I moved into sat above a closed nail salon with a purple sign still buzzing at night. The temporary orders left my spending watched in columns instead of feelings. Bear stopped inviting me to campaign drinks, and Lena blocked me after the first hearing date appeared on the calendar. Nico removed me from the Vanta campaign thread and told B he barely knew me outside work. At the studio, my accounts shifted away from nightlife, and nobody called it punishment. Marcy never came to the mediation office. She never asked how the hearing date sounded when someone else said it. The last thing from her was still that small heart under my message, bright and useless on the screen. I thought being wanted loudly would protect me from disappearing. The thing is, I was not wrong that Raphael loved too quietly. Of course, being right about one wound did not give me the right to make another. I walked away so he would finally see me. He saw enough to leave properly. The folded silver wristband stayed in the inside pocket of my old black bag. The door did not slam when Raphael left. It clicked softly, like something properly closed.